Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and Stephen Curry are pretty much the three faces of an entire generation of the NBA. The generation of the NBA that I grew up on. My favorite player of all time is Stephen Curry. My favorite player of all time to hate on is Kevin Durant. And I have defended LeBron primarily as a player time and time again. I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan, but I also think people say some ridiculous things about this guy, especially as a basketball player. A while back, Kevin Durant was exposed, and more recently, Stephen Curry has been exposed for having invested in Israeli surveillance and drones. Drones that were used and continue to be used by the IDF to further eradicate Palestinians in an ongoing genocide. Despite their
Wait, what?
this guy, especially as a basketball player. A while back, Kevin Durant was exposed, and more recently, Stephen Curry has been exposed for having invested in Israeli surveillance and drones.
Yeah, see, I'm not too well informed on the whole Israel and Palestine shit. I'd be trying to say out of that. I'm not gonna lie.
Drones that were used and continue to be used by the IDF to further eradicate Palestinians in an ongoing genocide. Despite there being a
Zephyr Security, which Curry's firm backed on a $30 million funding round in 2024, is run by name an Iranian raised in I'm not who was recruited as a teenager by Israel and for 15 years to spy within Unit 8200, the arm of the IDF, which intercepts and hacks communications. For the time, the IDF encompassed numerous assaults on Gaza, including the 2014 bombardment of the territory, which killed 2,200 Palestinians, and 2018-19 March of Return, which saw Israeli snipers murder hundreds of deliberately named thousands, and deliberately named thousands. So Curry funded 30 million to a company that has been okay. Curry funded 30 million to a company that has been leading assaults on Gaza, and these are some songs. Okay, cool.
further eradicate Palestinians in an ongoing genocide, despite there being a so-called ceasefire. Then at All-Star Weekend, LeBron said that he's heard nothing but great things about Israel.
For all the Israeli fans, what message would you like to send?
I hope I inspire the people over there to not only want to be great in sports, but also want to just be better in general in life. So hopefully someday I can make it over there. Like I said, I've never been over there, but I've heard nothing but great things.
How he managed to not hear about the minimum 80,000 deaths Israel is responsible for in the last few years is beyond me. The death total is largely understood to be much higher, as high as over 500,000 by some estimates. But let's
Aren't
be
they at war
conservative.
though? Like, I'm not trying to get canceled. I swear to God. And I'm like I said, I'm not that informed. And I had a class about this shit like 2 years ago, but I was pretty high. I don't remember. But aren't they at war? And if they are at war, I mean, rich people make money off war all the time. I'm not saying it's like right, but like, I don't necessarily blame. I don't know.
And just say that since October 7th, Israel is responsible for the death of 75,000 Palestinians. Palestine's population is over 40% children, meaning since October 7th, Israel has killed at a minimum, conservatively, 30,000 children. Let me say that again, 30,000 kids. It has been 864 days since October 7th at the time of recording, meaning on average, Israel has conservatively been killing 35
what?
children a day. Israel has, since October 7th, kids. It has been 864 days since October 7th at the time of recording,
800.
meaning on
Oh, so October 7th was like 2 years ago then. Right? I'm not that stupid.
average, Israel has conservatively been killing 35 children a day. This is what Curry and Durant are invested in. This is what LeBron has only heard good things about. And it's fucking disgusting. And I'm really tired of the lies, both from these players, but primarily from the American propaganda apparatus that we live under.
False idols. Okay, buddy.
While I am sad and angry at the support that these guys have shown to this,
If you are containing material that may be disturbing to viewers, sensitive to discussions of violence, bigotry, genocide, and other similarly difficult topics.
sad and angry at the support that these guys have shown to this genocidal country, I can't say that I'm all that surprised. I have a rule for myself personally that I try my best to follow, and I think you should too. Do not worship idols. They will disappoint you almost every time, especially celebrities in the entertainment industry.
Oh, first of all, I don't worship a human in this world. That's the problem. Y'all worship Jesus and that's all. That's it. You see what I'm saying?
My favorite player growing up, who is responsible for me even liking basketball to begin with, is likely a rapist. 3 of my 4 former favorite comedians of all time are either transphobic in Dave Chappelle's case, a sex pest in Louis C.K.'s case, or performed for a check from a government that has literal slave labor and has had journalists killed in the case of Bill Burr and Dave Chappelle again. One of my favorite actors of all time is an abuser. One of my favorite directors is a Zionist that lives in Israel and defended pedophilia on Howard Stern. Celebrities will disappoint you because they almost always operate out of self-interest more often than not. The public face they put on is not strictly reflective of...
I hate to tell niggas, but almost everybody acts with self-interest in mind. Those people are just put under more of a light, so obviously it's easier to criticize. And not saying that anything he just named was right, everything he just named was fucked up, but most people in the world act in their own self-interest. Not everybody does straight up illegal shit. Hold up. And say what? So my bank account could be doing better. My fault. I'm streaming. Let me talk about this video. I'm sorry. What was I saying? But no, yeah, like everybody damn near in the world acts in their own self-interest. Like no matter what they say, 9 times out of 10, most people's decisions are based on what will benefit them and their loved ones, at least. It's just not everybody does the illegal and fucked up shit that he just named. But yeah, almost everybody moves with self-interest, and those people just have more of a light on it. And yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
Their true convictions or lack thereof. Even the ostensible exceptions to this rule often end up being revealed as frauds like LeBron James. But though I may not be surprised, nevertheless, I must condemn the words and actions of these players. And I will do so in the order of least to most culpable. LeBron James, as you saw in the intro, said that he's heard nothing but good things about Israel. This is gross, but there are 2 interpretations that have...
Well, also, LeBron is a public and liked figure. If that's probably just PR training. He probably knows exactly what's going on. He could care, not care, but it's probably in his best interest not to comment on it one way or another. You know, when you're a public figure, it's pretty not important, but it's usually in your best interest not to get in political matters just for your reputation.
different levels of evil to them. The most charitable interpretation would be that LeBron is just a completely unaware dumbass whose billion-dollar net worth has completely blinded him to the realities of the world. And the circles around him who support the American status quo have only said good things to him, so that's genuinely most of, if not all, that he has heard. But I don't think that's the case. LeBron is one of the most PR-trained human beings in the history of people. He has been in the public eye since he was a teenager, being one of the most famous people in the world. He fields these sorts of questions from the media more often than people talk to their spouse. So let's look at how he answered a somewhat similar question from a Chinese reporter just a couple of minutes before this.
It happens to be Chinese New Year today. So how about sending some blessings to all your many Chinese fans?
It's always, well, I was just there last summer, and I've always had a great time, going, into China and just kind of continue to inspire the game of basketball. They love the game of basketball, and, happy, Chinese New Year is an unbelievable moment for sure. So to all my fans and people over there, it's always been great. You guys always welcome me and my friends and family with open arms, and I've always appreciated it. So, I know there will be another opportunity for me to go back over there at some point, and I'm looking forward to it.
Now let's once again look at that response to a reporter from Israel.
For all the Israeli fans, what message would you like to send for Israel, and also what do you think about Danny Avdia?
Well, I've been quoted on Danny already. So that's that. And then, if I have fans over there, I've never been there. If I have fans over there, then, I hope you've been following my career. I hope I inspire people over there to not only want to be great in sports, but I want to just be better in general in life. So hopefully someday I can make it over there. Like I said, I've never been over there, but I've heard nothing but great things, and I appreciate the question.
You can probably notice the pattern there. This kind of precision with language is kind of the whole point of public relations. Say as little as possible while still kind of answering the question, but without stepping on any toes. Having to protect your billion-dollar image since you were learning how to drive means that these old habits of speaking to the press come almost naturally. He's on autopilot, with the kind of subtle discomfort that gives the impression that he knows this has the potential to go wrong for him. LeBron always does his best to stay in his lane and refer to the same talking points he always uses and just hopes that it's inoffensive to most people. But it's not till the very end of his statement where he makes a really unfortunate misstep.
Hopefully someday I can make it over there. Like I said, I've never been over there, but I've heard nothing but great things. And hopefully someday I can make it over there. Like I said, I've never been over there, but I've heard nothing but great things. I appreciate the question.
When he says, hopefully I can one day make it over there, he means, when Palestine is free. He wants to go there as a liberator. Yeah. That's crazy! What the fuck? I can't. This is indefensible. That's crazy. I'm starting to think he didn't read any of those books. No, it's Le Zionist. That's. I'm sorry. It's over.
People are outraged at this.
Le Zionist? Alright, yeah, you're dick riding. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're dick riding. I'm not even gonna lie. You're dick riding. That was clearly a PR answer. He basically said the same thing he said about China. He just said he had already been to China. He said he loves when he goes over there. China got their own things going on. I'm not gonna speak on that either, but they got their own things going on. He didn't speak on none of their political situation. He didn't speak on none of Israel's political situation. So why the fuck you talking about some lasagna? Shut the fuck up. I'm sorry. I hate when niggas overreact to shit like that.
And it's because it is extremely offensive to anyone who knows what's going on. But LeBron isn't
really
the king
not.
of shutting up and dribbling. He seems like he yearns to be the opposite, but only when it's safe. He called Muhammad Ali the greatest athlete of all time. A big part of that PR-trained habit is silencing yourself. Quote, "When I was a kid, I was amazed by what Ali did in the ring," James told ESPN.com on the Friday after he passed away. "As I got older and started to read about him and watch things about him, I started to realize what he did in the ring was secondary to what he meant outside of the ring. Just his influence, what he stood for. The reason why he's the GOAT is not because of what he did in the ring, which was unbelievable. It was what he did outside of the ring. what he believed in, what he stood for, along with Jim Brown, Oscar Robertson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, Jackie Robinson. Those guys stood for something. He is part of the reason why African Americans today can do what we do in the sports world. We're free. They allow us to have access to anything we want. It's because of what they stood for, and Muhammad Ali was definitely the pioneer for that, paving the way for guys like myself. Today, I can sit and go to China and make trips to China and all over the world, and people know my name and know my face. I give all credit to Muhammad Ali because he was the first icon. Unquote. Well, LeBron, if you want to be like the great Muhammad Ali, once in a while you need to leverage your place as an icon and take some risk. Forfeit some potential additional exponential wealth and take a stand on something. Muhammad Ali was a guy who...
No. No. LeBron, do not listen to this nigga. I'm sorry. Don't do that. Don't do that. Your position, I won't pretend to understand your position, but he can't pretend to understand your position either. Taking stands on political situations like this can only end up bad for you. I'm sorry, it can literally only end up bad. Like, obviously I ain't gotta be nigga to tell you, but keep doing what you're doing. Just keep giving general answers to the public and support what you want to support in the private eye, especially while you're in the midst of your career. After you retire, okay, maybe, but in the case of Muhammad Ali, I won't pretend like I know too much about his stances or what he did, but I do know how he fought for the rights of my people, African Americans. So I know that it's a different situation. Situations he was speaking on directly affected him. He was more allowed to have a biased, not saying that it was a wrong bias or that it wasn't a definite right or wrong, but he was more allowed to have a biased viewpoint on things because it personally affected him. Things like this that don't personally affect LeBron can only end up in bad rep from somebody. Somebody will always be mad. Just like this. You got a whole segment in video just because you said I've heard nothing but great things. Shit like this can only end up bad. There's no reason to say that. Don't sacrifice nothing. Don't listen to niggas. I'm sorry.
Basically had to give up a belt and relish everything that he had done because of what he believed in, and ended up in jail because of his beliefs. LeBron, respectfully, you're not going to go to jail if you walk back this statement. I promise you. These stakes are fairly low. If you want to be like Muhammad Ali, advocate for a free Palestine. I find it deeply embarrassing.
Don't advocate for shit, gang.
For someone who claims to be politically aware, who claims to be more than an athlete, more than just a brand, to be so callous in his understanding of the world. Ignorance is a weak excuse, but it is an understandable one. Something many Americans are also very guilty of, and who's to say that LeBron's algorithm isn't just like your least favorite 41-year-old uncle's algorithm? The other interpretation would be that LeBron knows what Israel is doing and either doesn't care, is afraid to step on the toes of the wrong elites around him, or even supports it, which is really vile. I'd like to think it's the former. This statement can be walked back. And it's possible he is just ignorant and stepped in some real shit without knowing any better. A gross misstep from a PR-brained man who will correct that misstep. At least, that's all that I can really hope for. But then we have Stephen Curry. Now here's the thing about Steph and many other rich people. A lot of their investments aren't necessarily fully informed. A lot of people buy stocks without doing intensive research or even surface level research into the company that they're invested in. Hell, I even did this myself by mistake on a much smaller scale because I'm unfortunately not rich. But about a year ago, I decided to buy into the stock market. And found out like a week later that one of the things that I invested in was Palantir, which I had not realized was the evil-ass surveillance state company ran by the Antichrist To which I immediately pulled out my $200. That shit just said PAL on Robinhood, and the squiggly line made it appear to be a good time to invest, so I did so uncritically. That was
Type of shit I
ignorance at
do.
its finest, but I corrected my mistake as soon as I had new information. I'm not perfect, and I don't expect perfection from anyone, just a genuine effort to be better. Many rich people, and even the handful of working class folks with a little bit of money saved up, actually have financial management responsible for making investments on their behalf. That is the excuse that Steve Ballmer used for the whole aspiration situation. Was that a lie? Maybe, but the potentiality of it being true is there. In the case of Steph, it was his venture capital firm that did this investment. How hands-on Steph is with said firm isn't fully clear, though apparently this deal was orchestrated through Curry's former teammate Omri Caspi, who is Israeli himself, and hoped to bridge the gap between Silicon Valley and Israel's military tech with Zionism 2.0. So fuck Omri Caspi while we're here. What? Yeah, I
Wait.
think we should bridge the gap. Oh, fuck
Wait,
Omri Caspi military.
Wait, Curry's investments in Upwide also overlap with those of former Golden State Warriors teammate Omri Caspi, an Israeli ex-player who now runs a venture firm focused on Israeli startups and IDF spin-offs. Caspi has described his goal as building Zionism 2.0 and has publicly supported Israel's military actions. Yo, that's fucking insane. Okay.
Tech with Zionism 2.0. So fuck Omri Caspi while we're here. What? Yeah, I think we should bridge the gap between fucking Doctor Doom and Thanos. Like what? But maybe, just maybe, Stephen Curry invested tens of millions of dollars in Israeli mass surveillance companies by mistake. However, the more time passes, and I'd argue enough time has already passed, the more unacceptable it becomes for him to not withdraw his investment and make a statement apologizing for it. This is a big enough PR problem that he has one.
Fuck. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm evil in my core. Maybe I am. But like, what the fuck is this? Oh. But if I'm worth hundreds of millions, and I put in my stock, in my financial advisor or whoever put 30 million into something, and it's making me more millions, gang, I'm not questioning it. I'm not gonna lie. And what I'm not gonna do is, maybe I'm stubborn, but I'm not publicly apologizing for something that, first of all, I didn't purposely do. But I'm also not I'm not withdrawing. I'm honestly not withdrawing. Especially if, I don't know. I'm not too well informed, so let me not say I wouldn't withdraw. If I was more well informed in the situation, I'd make comments like that, but
1000% heard about the criticism by now. Unfortunately, I doubt this investment was any form of an accident. And while I had no previous impression that Curry was some beacon of morality, this is disappointing all the same. But Curry was some beacon of morality.
Joins neighbors in opposing affordable housing plan for Ritzy
morality. This is disappointing all the same. But then we get to Kevin Durant, who is easily the worst of the three. Because he didn't just say Israel is good, he didn't just invest in Israeli surveillance, potentially by accident. No, he invested directly in a company called Skydio.
Drones are the essential tools on the modern battlefield, but there's a huge amount of overlap between civilian drone technology and military drone technology. This is a real fielded drone in the hands of the US and allied militaries around the world, and it was built around AI and autonomy.
That's what he put his money in. And unlike Curry or LeBron, there is little to no plausible deniability here. He recently publicly just completely ignored the issue in a classic KD reply guy exchange on Twitter. The conversation began with trophy design, but was turned to his drone investments just for him to keep the subject on trophies in reply. So at the bare minimum, we have proof that he has indeed seen these criticisms. And knowing Kevin Durant, you can be sure that he is reading every reply in that thread like an insecure man-child. But it could possibly be much worse than that. Because while it hasn't been made official, it is not 100% confirmed, it seems very likely that he was using a burner in a group chat that got leaked. Said group chat had someone link a tweet about his investment, to which Durant replied, "If they need drones, we got ya." Everyone is choosing to focus on him talking shit about his teammates, and I understand because that is far more comfortable discourse to participate in. But there ain't anything worse than this. He can hate Curry behind the scenes all he wants. At the end of the day, it's just basketball. But it seems very likely that Durant knowingly invested in tools of genocide and did so with pride. I love the NBA, but I also care about the real world, and I have been loud and proud about how I am never one to try and separate the two. People think you should keep politics out of sports, but that's incredibly dumb. Politics already is in sports, and recent events have perfectly displayed exactly that. Many of you are probably not informed, or at least fully informed, about the long-standing situation between these two countries, so I'm going to lay it out for you, just so you have an idea of the evils that these three players are endorsing and profiting from. Believe it or not, this history doesn't start on October 7th, 2023. We could go back centuries, millennia even, but for the sake of brevity, let's keep it within the last 100-ish years. In 1917, during World War I, the British government announced its support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, a region that had been controlled by the Ottoman Empire for the 400 years prior. In Palestine is the city of Jerusalem, a city that's over 5,000 years old and is a holy land for all Abrahamic religions, including the small minority Jewish population that could be found in Palestine when the Brits came in. But following the Great War and decades of British control of Palestine, Jewish settlement was prioritized and tensions began to rise in the region, with nationalism being a common response. And speaking of nationalism, meanwhile, World War II was destabilizing and decimating Europe, including, of course, the Holocaust, one of the most industrious genocides in history, including the systematic killing of over 6 million Jewish people. So, in November 1947, the United Nations Partition Plan for Palestine was adopted, aka Resolution 181. It recommended the creation of independent but economically linked Arab and Jewish states and an extraterritorial special international regime for the city of Jerusalem and its surroundings, where neutrality and demilitarization were expected. The special international regime was supposed to be a hub for the new global government of sorts, and an instrumental part of it was Zionism, a nationalist movement meant to create a Jewish state in Palestine with as much land, as many Jews, and as few Palestinian Arabs as possible. The Zionist claim to Palestine was based on the notion that the Jews' historical right to the land outweighed that of the Arabs. And as the British kind of fell off, and America, along with the UN, stepped into its place as the dominant imperial forces in the world, the atrocities of the Holocaust were used as a justification to expedite the Zionist project. The land they chose and how they advertised it was an imperialist project under the guise of humanitarian pursuits, a classic imperial PR spin. Zionists referred to the region of Palestine as Israel, and Israel was called a land without a people for people without a land. The only problem with that was that's not even close to true. This land had people, but it was decided Palestine had to be the place because, like I said, Jerusalem is the Jewish Holy Land. I mean, it's also the Holy Land for Muslims and Christians, But as you'll learn throughout this video, the Western world doesn't give a fuck about Muslims in the slightest. Palestinian people and the Arab League alike rejected this plan to make Jerusalem a hub for the United Nations and a cornerstone of the Zionist project. And rather than any more attempts at diplomacy, on December 31st, 1947, the Nakba began. A mass ethnic cleansing effort by Zionists where Palestinians are being killed and displaced to this day. This earliest portion of the Nakba was done not only through gunning down Palestinian people, but also through poisoning village wells. In total, in the early events of the Nakba, over 15,000 Palestinians were killed in the process.
فرن والنسوان قعدات على الأرض وكل واحدة قاعدة وحاطة إيديها على راسها هيك وبقولوا للفران ارمي ابنك بالفرن ارمي ابنك بالفرن اسمه حامد قال له أنا ما برمي ابني قال له شوي هم ضربوا الحاج حامد على راسه ومسكوا الولد رموه بالفرن أنا شفت هالمنظر شفت هالمنظر ما تمش فيها حيل من مرة يعني بعدين مسكوا الأب حطوه وراه قالوا له الحق ابنك.
3-4 חודשים הראשונים הייתי רוצח.
מה זה אומר?
אני לא לקחתי שבויים. בזמן קרב, אם מישהו ירים ידיים, משהו כזה, לא לקחתי שבויים. זה זעזע אותי עד כדי כך, לא יכלתי לעבור לסדר היום. אם היה עומדת כיתה של זה עם ידיים למעלה, אז באותו יום הייתי רואה אותי, הייתי קוצר את כולם, עד כדי כך.
כמה אתה חושב אנשים הרגת ככה?
לא ספרתי. אני לא יכול לדעת בחיי.
Over 500 Arab majority towns were either destroyed or for the most part depopulated, while Jewish people moved into those now vacant towns and gave them new Hebrew names. Over 750,000 Palestinians were displaced. By the time the War of 1948 was over, 78% of the land formerly belonging to Palestine was now Israel. Call me crazy, but I don't think a land without a people would feature hundreds of villages and over 1 million people. Anti-Arab and anti-Muslim sentiment was so powerful that 1 million people could be dismissed as not even existing. All of this to establish a Jewish ethno-state, or so they claim. Quote, the Nakba represented a watershed in the history of Palestine and the Middle East. It transformed most of Palestine from what it had been for well over a millennium, a majority Arab country, into a new state that had a substantial Jewish majority. The transformation was the result of two processes: the systematic ethnic cleansing of the Arab-inhabited areas of the country seized during the war, and the theft of Palestinian land and property left behind by the refugees, as well as much of that owned by those Arabs who remained in Israel. There would have been no other way to achieve a Jewish majority, the explicit aim of political Zionism from its inception. Nor would it have been possible to dominate the country without the seizures of land, unquote. 1948 saw Palestine wrought with civil war between Arab and Jewish communities in the wake of Resolution 181 and the Nakba. And it ultimately ended up with victory for the Zionists, where the Israeli Defense Force was formed and the borders of New Israel were drawn. Jerusalem was even split into two regions, one eastern controlled by Jordan and one western controlled by Israel. These lines were explicitly meant to be temporary, and they were. That border, known as the Green Line, lasted until the 1967 Six Days War, where Zionism had another expansion into the rest of Palestine, capturing and occupying the Gaza Strip, the Sinai Peninsula, the Golan Heights, and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. This was achieved through blood, with tens of thousands of Arab people being murdered and hundreds of thousands of Palestinians being displaced. Since 1967, Palestinians have existed near or within Israel as second-class citizens borrowing from the playbook of dozens of Arab people being murdered and hundreds of thousands of Palestinians being displaced. Since 1967, Palestinians have existed near or within Israel as second-class citizens, borrowing from the playbook of apartheid South Africa. So the very foundation of Israel, begun with ethnic cleansing, mass killings, mass displacement, and those who remained were then treated like black people in the American South in the 1890s under Israel's apartheid. And since then, Palestinians have resisted the occupation, not just through self-defense, but also primarily through peaceful protest. Protests that were immediately met with further violence. In 2018, Palestinians began the Great March of Return. There was no violence, just marching near the Gaza-Israel border. Those protests lasted until the end of 2019, and in those 21 months of weekly protests, Israel killed 223 Palestinians with live ammunition, including 41 children, injuring a further 8,079. And a journalist, Yasser Mortaza, wearing press credentials on his chest, clear as day, was shot and killed by a sniper. And that's something that Israel loves to do. Just since October 7th, Israel has killed at least 270 journalists. And to understand just how absurd and unjustifiable that number is, there were less journalists killed in the U.S. Civil War, World Wars I and II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Yugoslav Wars, the war in Afghanistan, and the ongoing war in Ukraine. And not just less than those wars individually, there were less journalists killed in all of those wars combined. Really sit with that for a second. There is no time or place in the last 200 years that is more dangerous for a journalist than Gaza in the last 3 years. And all of this was under the guise of creating a land for Jewish people. But guess what? That was a fucking lie too. America has had a long history of imperialism, but unlike our abusive father country, England, the US has been the dominating force around the world in an era of global mass communication. From FDR's fireside chats to the Vietnam War or 9/11 being televised, and even today with the genocide of the Palestinian people being shown to the world all over social media, the American empire has been more visible than any empire ever has been in all of human history. That makes things tricky. The age of news media and journalism and a much better universal understanding of the concept of imperialism has made imperialism a dirty word, and it should be. But for the US government, this taboo must be worked around. So now the US just proclaims there's some humanitarian reason for doing what they do, or we just get into unjustifiable wars, but at least make an effort to make justifications to fool enough people. In school, we teach our kids that the result of World War II was America becoming the world. School has made imperialism any empire ever has been in all of human history. That makes things tricky. The age of news media and journalism and a much better universal understanding of the concept of imperialism has made imperialism a dirty word, and it should be. But for the US government, this taboo must be worked around. So now the US just proclaims there's some humanitarian reason for doing what they do, or we just get into unjustifiable wars, but at least make an effort to make justifications to fool enough people. In school, we teach our kids that the result of World War II was America becoming the world's police. And this idea that America is the world's good guys is often used to justify expanding the empire. A great recent example of this being the US removing Nicolas Maduro as president of Venezuela after kidnapping him under the guise of doing it for the people of Venezuela. Liberation. Regardless of how you feel about Maduro, this is not why they did that. They did it for oil. as well as the continued domination of the global south, a United States tradition, as well as the development of new regional supply chains.
Do you plan to seize any oil tankers that are headed to Cuba?
Well, we have a lot of oil people really interested. You saw that the other day. That was just a small group because the room in the White House, we need the ballroom, actually. We could have filled up the ballroom practically. We have so many people that want to go in for oil. So you saw some great companies.
It's always about the money. And the United States, being the biggest sponsor and cheerleader of Israel, made sure to send some of that sweet South American oil to their most important ally in the Middle East. But to call Israel an ally is a euphemism that I cannot get behind. Israel isn't an ally. It's an extension of the United States government. Just like how marching into Venezuela and stealing their oil is good for the empire, having an ultra-militarized hub in the Middle East is also good for the empire. It's geographically advantageous and politically beneficial in almost countless ways. Like, just one example is how Israel basically gives America a second vote at the United Nations since 1949. Meanwhile, Palestine, formerly the Palestinian Liberation Organization, is a non-member observing state since 1974. People like to say, like, oh, why is Ted Cruz saying that he's pledged his loyalty to Israel when he should be representing the US government? But representing Israel is representing the United States government. The US spends a lot to fund Israel, not because the US cares oh so much about giving Jewish people a homeland, rather because it's just another way to enact imperialist pursuits while pretending the reason is something noble. People say, how can you criticize Israel when America has a history of genocide? Because criticizing Israel is criticizing America, just as I criticize America's genocidal history at home. This is also why being all anti-Semitic about Israel is fucking stupid, just as it is for the Epstein files. Jewish liberation, Jewish ethno-supremacy is not actually the main motivator behind all of this. That's ancient thinking used to cover up far more sinister truths that are profoundly more normal in the worst ways. It is the ruling class running this country and many other parts of the world largely from the shadows who want to sink their grubby little hands into the Middle East, a land that is rich in resources and full of people that the Western world has decided is perfectly permissible to kill on a whim. This isn't a Jewish conspiracy. It's an American capitalist imperialist one. And the propaganda to manufacture consent for the Zionist project after decades and decades of success in America is finally starting to come to a head.
Americans' overall view of Israel's military action in Gaza. Do you agree with this?
For Israel.
How would you describe playing with Denny Avdia during this experience, and just how's he viewed around the league at this point?
And they asked me what I thought about this season. I said I believe he was an all-star, and I mean, he is an all-star. He's playing exceptional basketball.
Takes a lot of free throws, so playing against him, I haven't played against him this year, but advice is to not defend without fouling. And I mean, I don't know how many minutes I'll share with him in the court.
Some ignorant people think that I hate Denny Avdia because he's Jewish, because he's from Israel. No, that is not the case at all. I hate him because he supports the actions of his government. I hate him because he chose to join the IDF, despite there regularly being special exemptions for Israelis who have pursuits that would benefit the country's image. Denny was exempt. He could have avoided serving the IDF, but he chose to do so after he was already in the NBA doing his service while the NBA was shut down during COVID. Even if that's not bad enough for you, Denny has since referred to himself as an ambassador for Israel.
Okay, well, you also got to remember that if he was born and raised in Israel, the same way that a lot of things told in American history books are skewed to an American viewpoint and to make America look good, it's probably the same way in Israel. IEF probably looks like the good guys to him, regardless of what the nature of the situation is, how you're raised, and what you're being told for what's probably your whole life will definitely change how you just do stuff. So yeah, you probably, same way people join the American military and be like, they're serving their country, yada yada yada. He's trying to serve his. I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying that it's something you gotta think about when you're criticizing stuff like that.
And Benjamin Netanyahu has said his play fills Israel with pride. He's not just any star.
You're our Star of David.
He's our Star of David. Fucking corny ass. This isn't about where Denny is from. It is impossible to decide where you are born, and it would be ridiculous to criticize someone for that when it's not in their control. It goes way further than that. If you were born in Germany in the 1920s, that doesn't automatically make you a Nazi in the 1940s. Maybe you claim to be one for the sake of your own personal security from the real Nazis, but being from a place does not mean that by default you are obligated to support the actions of your government. At the bare minimum, you aren't obligated to be a representative of those actions. For an example of that, look no further than Team USA's athletes in the Winter Olympics.
I definitely do really care about what our country is doing, and I think it is really important also to, notice like the faults in our own government. Yeah, things are a little rough in our countries, but I think every government has its issues. There's so many protests that are going on, and I've attended, and it's, yeah, I mean, coming from a family of immigrants, like, I think immigrants deserve rights. I think it's a little silly, especially in America.
These athletes didn't even really get into specifics. This was an uncontroversial statement to sane people. Denny could very easily do the bare minimum and escape most of the criticism that he receives. Someone living in Nazi Germany isn't by default a terrible person. But someone living in Nazi Germany saying, man oh man, do I love the Nazis, man would I love to wear a Nazi uniform for a photo op, oh and by the way, I'm a representative of the Nazis and Hitler publicly calls you Germany's star, then fuck you. I was born in the United States, and every time I talk about politics, it is always from a lens of being deeply critical of the actions of the US government. If you have consumed any of my political commentary in the past, you would know that to be the case. Denny isn't bad because he was born in Israel. Denny isn't bad because he is Jewish. Denny is bad because he is a Zionist. He is bad because he is a staunch supporter of a genocidal government. And that is not permissible. Anti-Semitism is dumb because a whole race of people have not conspired to do this to Palestine. A whole race isn't in the Epstein files. People talk about racism through a moral lens primarily, and that is understandable. But what often gets left out of this conversation is racism is also stupid. It is illogical to believe that an entire ethnic group of people is one way or another. There might be trends within racial lines primarily just caused by culture, but people are not a monolith. And it completely lets the actual demons, the actual capitalist pigs, do whatever they want. Jewish people are one of history's greatest scapegoats, and choosing to take the bait and blame the Jews for everything is letting the actual perpetuators of violence and genocide off of the hook. It's not the US behind these killings, it's the Jews. Ain't that perspective super fucking convenient for the US government? A vast majority of Israelis do support the genocide, unfortunately, and yes, there were Jewish people involved in the foundation of the country, but Israelis are not the only Jewish people, and much of them were not privy to all of this. Many American Jews have deep issues with the way that Israel conducts itself, including the editor of this video and my best friend Rudy. The not in ourselves Jews have we're not privy to all of this. Many American Jews have deep issues with the way that Israel conducts itself, including the editor of this video and my best friend Rudy. The not in our name movement is real. Zionism is the belief in Israel as a colonial project, the support of a genocidal government. Judaism is a religion and an ethnicity. And this conflation of Zionism and Judaism is actively dangerous for Jews around the world, because now all of this violence, this genocide, is proclaimed to be in the name of the Jews. So people who are not critical of how systems work, a tool which American education usually does not equip its people with unless they take out a student loan, they just don't have the immediate capacity to understand that it's the governments that deserve the blame and not an ethnic monolith of people. And so when they're compelled to feel critical of Israel, instead, it's, oh, well, I hate the Jews then because they're doing all of this evil shit. But it's not the Jews. It's a genocidal government armed by the US taxpayers behind the mask of what's proclaimed to be a humanitarian project somehow. It's not anti-Semitic to be against the mass killing of children. And don't you ever allow anyone to say that shit. They are trying to silence you. It's nonsense that plays on people's fear of being perceived as racist. And the irony in all of this is there are plenty of people who staunchly support Israel who are anti-Semitic themselves. Fucking Donald Trump has said and done some deeply anti-Semitic shit. In 2017, following the Unite the Right march, where protesters chanted, "Jews will not replace us," Trump called them very fine people. He suggested to Benjamin Netanyahu that some Nazis were actually nice to Jewish people.
Did they wink at you? Did they give you a piece of bread extra? Did they give you a meal on the side, like, you know, you think of doing? Like what happened?
This nigga is really orange. This nigga is really orange. My fault. But this nigga is really orange. That's all I got to say. This nigga is truly orange. Like, I'm taking this video very seriously. I haven't paused in like 20 minutes. And I haven't been saying much. But this nigga is truly orange.
But in Germany, what happened elsewhere, people would try and help people that were in unbelievable distress.
Also, nigga, shut up. I'm sorry. Like, I have been taking in information. I haven't really been saying much. This nigga need to shut up. He beat.
They said no. I said all of them. I said, did they ever wink at you like, you'll be okay? You're gonna be okay? No, they didn't do that. They'd slap us. The hatred is unbelievable. And the lives, you know, they lived in a pipe.
He had dinner with fucking Kanye West and Nick Fuentes, two guys who are happy to tell you how much they hate Jews and love Hitler. And guess what? Donald Trump is an avid supporter of Israel and always has been. Now, you could argue that that's because he's compromised, but support of Israel was a universal political stance when he first took office, across party lines. That's the major reason the Democratic Party is so unpopular right now, because its proclaimed values are contradictory to their support of a genocidal ethno-state. On the other side of the aisle, Marjorie Titan Green believes in Jewish space lasers and still supported Israel upon taking power. Jewish space lasers. She has since rescinded her support, which was met by mass condemnation, and it resulted in her cowardly, bad-built, bleach-blonde, butch body resigning because she couldn't handle built bleach and mass condemnation. And it resulted in her cowardly, bad-built, bleach-blonde, butch body resigning because she couldn't handle the pressures of actually saying something real for once. In the right-wing media sphere, a while ago, Ben Shapiro supported Ann Coulter after she said some crazy anti-Semitic shit because at least she supported Israel. It is almost like the support of Jewish people and the support of Israel aren't the same thing. You can be an anti-Semitic Zionist and you cannot be anti-Semitic while simultaneously being an anti-Zionist. But why would someone who doesn't like Jewish people support Israel? Well, it's twofold. There's imperialist, capitalist interest, and then there is anti-Arab racism. Racism of all kinds has always been a part of America, but Islamophobia spread like a wildfire after 9/11. There is probably no version of racism in this country currently that is more permissible than Islamophobia and anti-Arab sentiment. And this is a country where many forms of racism are treated as permissible. Listen to the way fucking establishment Democrats were talking about Zoran Mamdani. Throughout years of propaganda where every Muslim by default for many Americans were labeled terrorists who want death to America, so many people in this country have decided that Arabs are not human, that it does not matter when they are killed. So when they are, even by the tens of thousands to even hundreds of thousands, and millions in the case of our wars in recent years, it is dismissed. The American media was, and still is, more interested in talking about the 1,200 Israelis killed and 250 hostages taken on October 7th, 3 years ago, than the 80,000 Palestinians that have been killed in response. Not to mention the 1.9 million displaced in Gaza and the hundreds.
Wait, are not back.
1,000 Palestinians that 3 years ago, 250 were interested in talking about the 1,200 Israelis killed and 250 hostages taken on October 7th, 3 years ago, than the...
That's what I did know that part. I knew that part, right? And that was, from my knowledge at that point, that was how I perceived this was started. Like I said, I wasn't too well informed. This is the most information I've ever had on this subject, the last 30 minutes of this video or so. But that was, to my knowledge, how it started. So I was always of the mindset that, well, you played with fire, now you're getting blown the fuck up, respectfully. And that's just how life happens. But obviously with the more context, it's a much different situation.
80,000 Palestinians that have been killed in response, not to mention the 1.9 million displaced in Gaza and the hundreds of thousands of dead people who are classified as indirect. deaths. Americans are brainwashed into not seeing these people as people. It's even baked into how we measure our alleged warfare. In 2012, the New York Times reported that the Obama administration excluded all military-age males from the collateral damage count in areas where the US engaged in drone warfare. Were these men members of Al-Qaeda or the Taliban? Who knows? But they could be soldiers, so they don't count if we kill them. If you think that can be dismissed because they started it, A, they didn't, as I have already laid out, and B,
I thought they and that's my apologies. That was my ignorance. I thought they started it. So yes, I was dismissing it. I'm not gonna lie.
While a violent mass killing isn't a good thing in any context, it is an understandable thing when it's in response to decades of oppression, ethnic cleansing, and second-class citizenship. Palestinians tried time and time again to protest peacefully, and it was met with gunfire, and the problem's only getting worse. JFK has a great quote from 1962, one of my favorite ever, that perfectly sums up the reality of October 7th. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. But you cannot expect to brutalize and silence people for generations and not have violent repercussions in response. Nat Turner in 1831 was executed by hanging in Jerusalem, Virginia. Turner led the deadliest slave rebellion for white. One was executed by hanging in Jerusalem, Virginia. Turner led the deadliest slave rebellion for white people in American history. As many as 65 white people were killed in the Southampton insurrection, but as many as 120 black people were killed in response, many of which had nothing to do with the rebellion. Were the slaves who violently resisted people who saw them as subhuman and kept them as second-class citizens at best and disposable property at worst bad? Was this action unjust? Were the white people who persecuted black people who were uninvolved in the rebellion just acting in self-defense? American imperialist interests have been raping the land and murdering the people of the Middle East for decades, and it's actually just an export of what we've been doing.
Can you say that? That's why I'm not streaming this.
To people stateside for centuries. And anytime people resist the boot of the American empire, they are labeled as terrorists, even including those who don't resist but just look like the ones that do. This is not about war. This is about imperialism, racism, capitalism, and more uncontroversially, this is about calling out genocidal behavior when we recognize it. It's about knowing that this isn't some complicated war, it's a genocide. Clear as day, plain and simple. It's the most documented genocide in human history. Those who are not seeing it have intentionally put on blinders. And it is this genocide that Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant are directly funding of their own volition. Now, I will still watch these guys play basketball, both as a fan, but also because it is my job. I can't stop enjoying Curry pulling up from the parking lot just because he's paying for that parking lot to be mass surveilled. Rudy still listens to The Life of Pablo, even around other people. But it's going to leave a bad taste in my mouth for the rest of my life unless they say something immediately. This shit isn't okay. It's not a joke. This isn't just another investment. This is millions of dollars being contributed towards the genocide of a people. And it is worth noting that this is just the players. The majority of owners and the commissioner of the NBA are Zionists, and they should be criticized for this too, but they largely exist in the shadows. These players are forward-facing role models to untold numbers of children, And while those children line their pockets and shower them with praise, they use that money to fund the murder of Arab children on the other side of the world. For what it's worth, there are NBA players who have shown some support to Palestine. Dwight Howard years ago tweeted his support for Palestine, which of course immediately prompted the commissioner to give him a call to take down the post.
A couple years ago when I played for the Houston Rockets, I tweeted "Free Palestine." I dang near got kicked out the league for it. Before that, the conversation happened with some Palestinians, and they were telling me, I actually went to the movies one day. I was in the movies in Houston. A whole bunch of Palestinians was like, "Hey man, we're big fans of you. Can we watch movies with y'all?" So we go to the movies. After the movies, I'm taking pictures with all the, fans and stuff like that. And they asked me to just bring some awareness. So I tweet "Free Palestine." Less than 10 minutes after I tweet that, I get a call from the commissioner of the NBA.
Stop it.
Agents, people like working with my foundation at the time, Texas, you gotta erase this tweet. You gotta take this down. You're gonna get it. I'm like, what did I do that was so bad?
Kyrie Irving was just sitting courtside at the All-Star game wearing a press shirt in solidarity with Palestinian journalists killed by Israel.
Basketball will save your life, but it won't save you from politics, I'll tell you that. Because politics is gonna do your ass. Trust me, it's gonna do all of us.
And Jaylen Brown even said shit at the All-Star game that at least ostensibly appeared to support Palestine vaguely.
You've been so big with using your voice. What would you say to this generation that's trying to find theirs?
Continue to speak out. There's a lot of stuff going on in our world beyond basketball, beyond sports. Don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged. I think we're kind of used to playing the game or following, there's a fear associated to kind of playing a game or I don't know how to describe it, but don't be afraid to create a new path and be who you're destined to be.
But for the most part, these players will stay silent for the fear of either being perceived as anti-Semitic or for the fear of hurting their money, with Zionist owners not wanting to pay anyone who is outwardly pro-Palestine. And it is really easy for most people to stumble into anti-Semitism by accident in the process of doing anti-Zionism. There are rhetorical traps around every corner, and that's maybe the only thing that you can use to describe this conflict as complicated. But whether or not it's a war or a genocide being done against the Palestinians is dead simple. It's a genocide. And even if you do believe the Holocaust is a righteous justification for ethno-nationalism, even if you still have some Zionist sentiment left in you, ask yourself, is genocidal behavior towards Palestinians in retaliation to a genocide done by German Nazis really self-defense? I know that history does go back further than the 100-ish years that we talked about in this video, but in the 21st century, we've learned something we didn't know before. Nationalism is bad. Jewish people deserve to be safe everywhere, not just in one region in the Middle East, just like Palestinians and every other kind of person on earth deserves a dignified life. Judaism surviving does not depend on a genocidal ethno-state surviving, especially not one that just so happens to be a hub for the American empire at the expense of the American taxpayer. It is just so completely fucked from the ground up, and it's made it harder and harder for me to try and enjoy this game as a separate entity because it's not. I'll end this with a really great tweet that I saw from @ComradeAndre2K in response to LeBron's comments. Quote, "The Zionist argument to justify Israel's present occupation of Arab Palestine has no intelligence or legal basis in history," end quote. Malcolm X. Maybe you should read past the first page. Okay, well, that's that video done. Hopefully the channel still survives after this, but as you can probably tell, I'm really fed up with the state of the world, and it has been continuing to eat at me significantly lately. So I just felt compelled to make this video that is just so explicitly political. Typically on this channel, we try to take a sneaking the vegetables approach, as we describe it. Like, we'll give you a little bit of politics on top of the basketball, but this is directly related, and it's so much more important than basketball. And ultimately, I care more about talking about shit that is more important than basketball. So thank you if you made it to this point. I really appreciate your support. And if you enjoy hearing me as a political voice, well, I have good news. I have decided to finally make a politics-only channel. I used to just kind of have a little bit of it in here and some crossover on Little Rusty Buckets, and don't get me wrong, there will still be political nature to my commentary and other avenues, but I needed an outlet to talk about stuff politically explicitly without needing to find some tie-in to the NBA to justify it. So that will be linked in the description, and hopefully when this video comes out, we'll have a video up on that channel already going over my issues with the Democratic Party and the way that they allow fascism to persist. But that is it. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Shit. Okay. Where do I start? Where should I start? I thought I full screened this. Oops. Okay. Alright, alright. All I could really say is, it'd be crazy if my mic wasn't recording. It'd be terrible to have to get rid of this last hour. This is recording, right? Okay, cool. All I could really say is, again, I'm not the most political person. I'm not the most political person, so I'm not going to give some type of righteous stance on this as he did, because I can't pretend to know everything that's going on. Even with the stuff he told me, I still need to do my own due diligence into seeing, into forming my own opinion or whatever. But from where I stand on the NBA player side of it, I don't blame them, if that makes sense. Like, especially like you said at the beginning of the video, a lot of people with money, and like not even as much money as them, but people with like just basic stock portfolios, aren't actually investing in stuff individually every day. It's somebody's job that they're getting paid to invest in different things. Kevin Durant, that drone comment was crazy. That's outrageous. But LeBron, I really don't blame. That's just a PR. No, that's just a PR statement. That whole Zion and shit. No, that's just not true. I'm sorry. That was clearly PR. He was just protecting his brand, his image, and he should do that every time. I'm not of the belief that he should risk his stature or his money to say something. I understand that people believe that public figures should step out and take stances on certain things, but I feel like if he's also not well informed, or if he doesn't feel like it is in his best interest to make a comment, I don't think he should make a comment. I think that would be very stupid of him, actually. As far as Steph Curry, I think he just has somebody running his stock portfolio, gang. I'm not gonna lie. And if it's making him money, he probably hasn't looked that deep into it. Like, he might know a little bit, but if he doesn't know that full 100-year history you just gave me, why would he pull out his money? Or why would he, especially if he's making tens of hundreds of millions or something, a few Twitter commentators aren't going to stop him from doing that. So I don't believe he will pull out or he will publicly apologize, because it's probably not worth it to him, just being honest. Is it right? That's for everybody else to decide. But yeah, that's really my full stance on the whole matter. If you want to watch the original video, I'm gonna have it linked in below, linked in the description below. Shout out Rusty Buckets. I'm an avid watcher of his channel. I'm not really political, like I said, but his political content is cool. I really watch his basketball content more most of the time though. But that was an interesting video, and it was very informational, so I could appreciate that all the time. But yeah, other than that, I think I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here.